Today on
Doomed!
My life is ruined, Alex. All right, if you don't get what I'm referring to there, I swear to you, it will make sense soon. On this episode of Doomed with Matt Binder, Ben Collins of NBC News, joins us to take a look at how Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the internet in general is radicalizing the next generation of the far right. We'll also be talking about the future of fake news and a whole lot more. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring up our guest at this time. Here we go. Just the old YouTube. There we are. Ben Collins, how are you doing today?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me today.
No, I'm excited to be here. I just love your work, so I'm glad that we can do it.
Oh, why? Thank you. I love your work too.
Oh, let's make out.
Let's do it. Yeah. I mean, we're obviously in the same room because people who are watching on the YouTube channel sees us side to side. I could just put my arm around. Wait, put my arm around you. There we go.
Okay, perfect.
So, Ben, let's actually get started with this. I mean, there's so much to talk about, so much important stuff to get to, and I'm going to start it off with this clip that I have been laughing at for the past few days. So, for people, I think this actually happened before the last show, and I briefly mentioned it on the last show. Facebook basically decided that a bunch of far-right Facebook users were dangerous. They considered them to be dangerous, and this includes Milo Yiannopoulos, Laura Loomer, Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson. The list goes on. A few more people, I think, but those are the main ones. And poor Laura Loomer has been basically banned. And when I say poor Laura Loomer, I don't actually mean it, but poor Laura Loomer, she's been basically banned from every major social networking platform. And she goes on InfoWars, and there's this clip going around that I just have to play because it's let's just watch it because I think it speaks for itself. Of course, it's not coming up. 1 second. La-di-da. Here we go.
Crazy, but what are they doing? I want to know what people are actually going to do. My life is ruined. Does anybody understand how ruined my life is? I'm sick of it. I don't want to listen to people tell me that I'm a conspiracy theorist. They don't know what it's like to be me. My life is ruined, Alex.
No, I understand. I just think you need to go with it. And, I understand. I've been through this myself.
Poor Laura Loomer. Listen, if you're going that crazy on InfoWars that Alex Jones has to become the voice of reason and basically say, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Be like me. I roll with the punches.
Right.
Then, it's if it was anyone else, I would say it's sad. Because she's crying. She's literally crying.
Yeah.
And I just, I can't feel bad for her.
Well, yeah, I mean, she made $67,000 this weekend, which I've never made a tenth of that in a weekend doing anything. So,
Did she really make? She made.
Yeah, she did. Just fundraising off her deplatforming. So that's the thing is that doctors do this. They're good at riling up enough attention to put themselves in spaces so that they have to be covered in this sort of way, and they can also pay the rent. That's sort of actually kind of like that's the double-edged sword here, right? With this whole deplatforming thing, right? You put them, you don't have them have this steady drip of disinformation and racist stuff that they do all the time. Like she was doing this really weird, awful stuff with Jacob Wall and like trying to terrorize Ilhan Omar for a long time, and then they all these platforms said that's enough. Like stop doing this. Like you're gonna hurt somebody. It's gonna get really bad quick. So that's the issue, is that we have to we have to decide really if that's worth it, because if you deplatform them, what they'll do is they'll go and they'll show up back in the trending topics because everyone's seeing this woman chaining herself to the Twitter headquarters, or doing that stuff on InfoWars where that fit itself is newsworthy. So in essence, deplatforming them, if you want to take away their message, might amplify it, at least in the immediate. But who knows? Like now, by 2020, go on like doing Jacob Wall stuff again with him. You have to weigh the net positive for society if you're a platform like Facebook.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I play that clip because if we don't laugh at these people, then what is the point then? What is the point?
I think there is this moral panic amongst a bunch of reporters right now, because this morning, for people who are Wednesday, where he held another press conference to say that I actually don't even know the point of this press conference. I saw it happen and I still don't really understand what the takeaway was. But something sexual assault, Democrat, something, whatever. His whole formula, right?
Right.
And that's, I don't know if I don't know if making him, I don't know if there's a way to make him go away from society and stop libeling people other than the courts, which I think is probably where it's going to end up.
Right. And he's the biggest joke of them all. At least all these people are terrible, but Jacob Wall is straight up just like this is all just a troll to him. There is no Laura Loomer believes horrible things. She's a terrible person. Jacob Wall, I don't think he believes anything. He just fealty to Trump, right? That's Jacob Wall.
That's the thing. That all of those reporters who are I don't know, are we amplifying this too much? Are we telling him that if he keeps doing these stunts that he can keep he'll stay in the news and all that stuff? But I think it's actually important to show how bumbling racists are and people who smear merchants are, and how bad they are at doing regular things that anybody else could do. Competently telling a white lie is not that complicated. And they have found a way to make it this masterful exercise in messing up every single time.
Oh, right.
They new way to absolutely own themselves every time. And I think showing that is part of the news, showing that that built into the cake of racism and dirty tricks is an inability to do basic human stuff, an inability to process factual information. So I get the reporters who are stop giving him attention and stop going to his driveway and all that stuff. But showing how terrible your life is if you go down this path is an important part of the story. It's showing the denouement of being an idiot publicly is part of the whole thing.
Now, I actually agree with you completely on all that. I don't think there's, obviously it depends on how you cover these things. And I think, most responsible reporters and commentators know how to handle it. If you're just going to go out there and basically give them a platform to spew whatever they want to spew and not basically either refute them or basically make fun of them, then you're causing a problem. But I would say about 99% of people are handling it correctly, and that other 1% are their ideological equals. So.
Oh, totally. If you both, that was the issue, right? I think previously, had this happened 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been a real problem. There are people back in the day, both sidesing Richard Spencer. That's how we got to this moment, right? That's how we got to, this slow creep of neo-Nazism sort of rising in the United States. Is people credulously covering, bad reporters credulously covering what Richard Spencer had to say and just being hey, sir, how do you feel about racism? And he's it's great. No, don't do that. Bad.
Right.
But if you handle it with the correct amount of skepticism, then it works out great. I think that's what the news is. We are in an age of constant graft, of constantly people messing up publicly when trying to scam people out of stuff, permanent summer of a scam. So if you show people failing at it which is usually what happens, then you are accurately reporting the moment, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And let's talk about actually, these people that I mentioned earlier who all got kicked off Facebook. And by the way, Facebook handled it horribly. They completely screwed up their
Right.
banning of these people. Basically, they used it as basically like a press release. Like they had an embargo, it seems like, with a couple of outlets, which is normal, but not for this. This is something that you don't usually, you embargo some sort of platform news when you want to make some big announcement and get all these companies all these outlets covering you at once with this great cool new feature or whatever. It's not usually something reserved for you're banning a bunch of terrible people from your platform finally. But
Right.
They did this, and the news breaks. Again, an embargo means that when the news breaks, Facebook told them to all cover this story and publish at this time. They didn't ban everybody by the time the story broke. So
Yeah.
Milo and Laura Loomer, they all had a chance to go on Instagram and say to everybody, hey, by the way, Facebook's about to ban us from Facebook and Instagram. Follow us at these other platforms.
Yeah, they were like, follow us on Telegram, which is where ISIS and the Russian trolls hang out, by the way.
Right.
But literally, that's ISIS used to communicate with people through Telegram because they knew it wouldn't get shut down because their owner is one of those no speech is outlawed on Telegram, so that's where they're headed.
Right.
Great platform. But that's the thing is like it sort of fueled the conspiracy fire. Like I was watching Don't Ask Questions, but I was watching InfoWars afterwards, and they were like the Facebook colluded with the mainstream media to ban these. I'm like, nope, that's not at all how embargoes work. They messed up the embargo. Like presumably, what would have happened is they would have banned these people, and then like 5 minutes later, the embargo would have came up that would have explained the banning. So reporters knew what was happening before. Like a massive amount of high-profile people lost their accounts, because then that would just limit confusion. That makes sense to me as a PR strategy, but they messed it up. They did it backwards, and then it made it look like there was some global conspiracy, which is great. Not at all what we need.
Right. Well, you know what? I really do. I mean, if you just listen, I mean, this is clearly obvious to anyone who's paid attention to Alex Jones at any point. But just especially looking at that Laura Loomer clip, seeing them side by side, Laura Loomer, who actually is out of her mind, and Alex Jones, who you can tell is an actor and meticulously plans, well, maybe not meticulously, but has an outline of where he wants to go so he can promote his show by doing these crazy things.
Yeah.
I mean, anything couldn't be clearer than day that when Alex Jones gets banned, he knows that he's playing to an audience to try to use it to hype himself up. He's not actually upset. Like, maybe he's bothered that he's losing... I'm sure he's bothered he's losing a platform as big as, when he lost YouTube, because that was his bread and butter. But in the general sense, he clearly knows how to use this stuff for himself. So, I mean, seeing that Laura Loomer thing was basically like, there we go. Now you could really see the grift that is Alex Jones. Like, he's the king of it, There's no one better.
He's acutely aware of where the line is, like what looks insane and what looks just like standard, like, you have to buy my supplements, therefore there is a thing in the tap water. Like he knows exactly what to say. He knows he knows how to drag people from like a deep-seated fear in government or, society generally, and drag them over to the store and buy a bunch of boner pills and garbage. So like that's what he's great at. Once it becomes like, this overtly political, overtly about themselves, right? They don't want to appear as if like their livelihoods are at risk, because then the jig is up, right? Once Laura Loomer starts to fear that the gravy train is ending, that shows and that looks bad. And Alex Jones knows that. He has to portray strength in this moment, even though he's losing a lot of reach. So that's why I'm sure that's why he reacted in that way. And again, he's he's a politician, Alex. He's very tight with his talking points. He knows where to go. He knows what to say. He's good at what he does.
Oh, absolutely.
But what he does is bad for literally.
Absolutely. I've said this on the show before, and I hate to, I don't like to bring it up all the time because it sounds like I'm giving the guy props when full stop I'm not. But legitimately, like, you just can't lie about it. unlike a lot of the other right-wing grifters, Alex Jones actually has a talent for broadcasting, much like Rush Limbaugh. It's unfortunate that both those people choose to use their talent for broadcasting for terrible, horrible things.
And if you talk to ex-InfoWars employees and you see their sort of testimonials, they're like, I live in Austin. I get paid as like a board op or like just like a basic job at InfoWars. I get paid $100,000 plus a year in Austin, Texas. I get great health insurance. InfoWars has great health insurance.
Wait, what?
No, they do.
Are you being serious?
So like, it's a great. The thing is, if you are willing to overcome, like the fact that you are doing work for a very scary operation, it's a pretty good job, and that's why. That's why when people leave, they don't say much usually, because like the moral qualms don't overcome the good salary that you get and the good benefits that you get. If you read about stuff, you can look this up. If you read about like people who leave, they're like, yeah, this is, of course, like he treats his employees well. Which is like it doesn't make any sense also because he's not about that. Like that's not.
It's also not something that's typical with a lot of those guys. Like,
oh, of course. Like for example, like the Blaze had to be sold because it was hemorrhaging cash and all these things. But he runs a tight ship. He has like multiple profit streams. He used to sell ads. Now he mostly it's subscription.
Right.
Subscription bone broth, I guess. Like, so he gets people to give him $20 a month for a $5 product, and that's how he does it. And he's skilled at it. This is what, just like in the old days when people used to go town to town and be like, I've cured this man's cancer. Take this, random pill. He's just doing that on the internet. It's not complicated. It's a age-old thing.
He's a carny.
Yeah, except that's the problem. Like the issue is that's why I think people get angry at journalists because they think we're like harping on the platforms and like we hate Facebook and YouTube. But like we just don't like that it's like the carnies run the carnies run these things. They have more power than ever because they've manipulated these incredible marketing machines. It's like they have a billboard outside of every like vulnerable 13-year-old's window every morning. And I think that journalists see this and we're like, that's obviously bad. Like, we should be reporting on this from every angle. And I get why people are sick of talking about Facebook and YouTube and stuff, but that's the issue with them is that they didn't take responsibility for this for a long time, and now they're like, maybe they're overcorrecting. No, but they're finally starting to take some action.
I honestly would probably give Mark Zuckerberg a pass every now and then if he was just openly a carny, actually. If he was just like, step right up to the biggest social network on earth, if it was something like that, I would actually be like, this is entertaining.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you view Facebook as a carnival, it's just like a really high-end, very good carnival, right? I mean, and it's for the same people. It's for people who need to, like, keep pumping coins into the slot, right? And that's what they do every day. Like, that's how we have such, like, boomer rot on that. On that platform, yeah. It's
unfortunate that instead we get Mark Zuckerberg who steps on stage and goes, "Oh, the platform is we value your privacy on the platform. Ha ha ha! Here's a joke. Ha ha ha!" And nobody laughs.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like I think that he has taken advantage of the fact, and not I don't think in a cruel way. I think a lot of this stuff is just negligence. I don't think he's like I think he just tried to operate a platform that tried to make money and. He didn't like at every step. He was not in line with what reality is. With the fake news stuff, he was 3 months behind. With these extremists, he's many, many, many months behind. With the privacy stuff, I think he's starting to catch up now. But like,
all right,
that's just not. He's not all the way there on what the actual problems in the platform are, and he won't be for the next one, whatever it is. I don't know what it is yet.
All right, and so let's actually talk a little bit about. Before we get to what the future of all this holds, going into the next big election in 2020, let's actually because we connected talking about YouTube specifically, and this sort of speaking of Facebook and Twitter, these companies, they all have a place, they all have a responsibility basically. Based on where we are today with with the far right, the radicalization of young impressionable minds. Basically, the fact that like there's a subset of video gamers who are basically using these same grifter right-wing tactics to harass people. Like, all this has to do with these companies. But probably the one that, still, even though it gets so much coverage now, I still think it's overlooked when people talk about Facebook and Twitter. I think YouTube has so much power when it comes to all this. And frankly, as much as I love YouTube, they do the least to take care of it, to do something about it. They have a very hands-off approach, and that's on them. If that's how they want to run their platform, there's nothing illegal about that. They can run their platform like that. We can criticize them for running their platform like that. But I don't think they have quite come to terms with what their platform, intentional or not, has given sort of society at this point.
Yeah, I think that's what it is with all of these people, and we've all had conversations with executives at all of these companies, and what we keep saying all the time to them, we say it to their faces now, and we're like, look, the larger problem here is that you guys created a thing that you didn't expect to be evil, because why would you do that? You created a thing that you thought was going to be great. You created a thing that you could post your kid falling off a sled, like, whenever you wanted to, and then a remix of the kid falling off a sled, and you're like, how could this possibly be bad? This is, like, incredible and perfect. And I agree with you. Like, if it remained that way, that's an amazing platform. And, like,
right.
Frankly, it should have been more, like, platform hygiene and maintenance to make sure it remained that way. But over time, the carnies and the grifters, knowing that if they come into town and they offer you the magic serum, and knowing that they can make a lot of money, and knowing that they can increase their reach every time by making their claims more extreme, and making the person that they're curing more sick, right? Then that's the issue. Like, they didn't see the carnies coming in, because the carnies were I don't even say they were well dressed. I just don't think they thought it was a problem. So that's what it is.
They were dressed like clowns and said, "Hey, clowns belong in the carnival, so bring them on in."
Yes. Yeah, they're like, this clown's getting annoying, and then but the problem is, like, they didn't understand that the clowns were like going and telling, like, kids to go shoot up schools and stuff, right?
Right.
Or, like, people were intuiting that from their message.
Right. They didn't realize the clowns were all Pennywise. Right.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. That's exactly what was going on. So I get it. Every time we have these conversations with them, and we're like, look, we don't think you're evil. We don't think we don't think you sent out to, like, go and make sure Nazis came back on the world, which is a weird thing, but it happens. So it's time to, like, it seems like it's time to make it so your platform is not the platform for that. Like, I have no problem if you want to be the platform that hosts those people, but I would just like you to be more upfront about it and be more transparent about what that actual platform is doing, because we know from the research that's what's happening. So not just living in denial with it is a bad plan. That's all.
Right. And I sort of think that they are waking up to it a bit, but I think we're now at the point now where they've basically drawn their line in the sand and have picked a side. I think Facebook, I think they're probably the worst of all the companies on privacy issues, because they clearly don't care about privacy. But when it comes to the dangerous right-wingers, and I say dangerous because it's an odd, in like quotations here, because I think it's an odd sort of, I don't know. I think calling them, for the platform to call them dangerous themselves, it gives them too much power, right? I think it was unnecessary to give it that distinction. I mean, there's other ways to.
They continually repeated racist and extremist views, like that, and they didn't stop when confronted with facts.
Right.
And they were fundraising.
Right.
Like you can just see what they were doing. You don't have to label them in any way.
They broke.
Like, look, this is not right. We don't want people becoming rich off of racism and extremism on our platform. That's not a complicated sentence, but that's really what it is, right?
Right. They broke our terms of service. How hard would that have been? Like, that's legitimate. Like,
yeah, totally.
But I think Facebook is taking, especially, they had this ridiculous, God, it's just all coming to my mind now, all the random mess ups these companies have done through the years. But they finally fixed that ridiculous distinction where they said, white supremacist, not okay on our platform. White nationalist, white separatist, come on in, as if there's any sort of...
Look, I always, it was baffling to me when, that was a big Richard Spencer thing, and this is why I think he's actually a really good case study for how we messed this whole thing up and how it got changed. So if you wrote that Richard Spencer was a white supremacist on your website 3 years ago, or blog or newspaper or whatever, he would come at you and be like, I'm going to sue you. I'm not a white supremacist. I don't think white people are better than black people or Hispanic people. I think that we should be in different places. Okay. So he was like, I'm a white nationalist, and that's what my thing is. So everyone just bended the knee to that. Everyone just called him a white nationalist instead of a white supremacist. But the problem is, if you think about it, how are you going to get a whites-only nation? How's that going to happen?
Right.
There's going to leave voluntarily. Everybody else is just, almost a half the population is going to just be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, let's go back to where we were from thousands, in some cases, of years ago. Yeah, sure. That makes sense. That's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen in Europe. It's not going to happen anywhere. So the premise of white nationalism is let's have a race-based civil war to kick out, or sort of eugenics-based. It's just it's impossibly worse than white supremacy, if you ask me. So it was always nuts to me that was an acceptable formula, and now that loophole, which never should have been a loophole, is gone.
Right, and it's to me the craziest thing was it wasn't like the Richard Spencers were out there calling themselves white supremacists, and then Facebook came up with this rule, and then they were suddenly, oh, we're actually white nationalists now. The worst thing to me was these guys actually set the conversation for Facebook to say, no, those guys are actually different. Richard Spencer was a white nationalist, saying he was a white nationalist up front first. He was never calling himself a white supremacist. So that means Facebook actually knew what these guys, I don't see... I guess they can claim that they thought there was a difference legitimately, right, and they weren't trying to. But you gotta be real. Maybe they're not as smart as they'd like to think. Maybe they're really good at coding, but stupid when it comes to literally just basic street smarts. But
right. Well, that was the problem, and that's two issues here, right? One, all these people in tech think that the only thing that's important is getting a STEM degree and getting a degree in that field, and liberal arts are useless, and why do we even have arts? This is why we have arts, because the important thing is the Nazis were coming back, but they were wearing white polo shirts instead of Klan hoods, and you guys couldn't identify it because you didn't read the books. You just went and coded.
Right.
So you needed somebody at an executive level to tell these people, hey, listen, guys, these are bad people. But the things that they're saying is not different from the KKK. They're just in a different outfit. That was necessary years ago. Now they're catching up. Now they're getting all these people who have history degrees or whatever, and now they're understanding that you can't just turn on the machine and walk away from it and expect society to survive it.
Right. And so let's talk about. Let's actually bring up. You were on MSNBC earlier today, talking about specifically talking about deepfakes, but in a broader sense, and we'll get to. You can explain what deepfakes are in a second, but more broadly, actually talking about another major issue with these tech platforms. We covered the far right radicalization, and maybe we'll touch upon that again in a minute, but. Put that aside for a second. The other major issue right now, there's many, but the other major issue is basically the misinformation, the fake news, the propaganda that really has always been on the internet, but was sort of weaponized in a way that it was never before weaponized in 2016, and subsequently is probably going to, well, not probably, almost certainly going to get worse in 2020.
Right. And the scariest thing with deepfakes to me is just pictures. There's this website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, and every time you refresh it, there is a new picture of a person that isn't real but looks entirely real, like a composite image of several different people in like varying in age. If you need a baby, just refresh it 5 times. If you need a woman, just refresh it twice. It's just like, it's horrifying. And the problem is that is a direct crack in our ecosystem for spotting foreign influence campaigns. Like the way a lot of reporters, including when I was at the Daily Beast, we found a ton of the Russian trolls. The way we could do it is be like, this person is claiming to be Jenna from Kansas who loves American football and like cheese dip, and she's really this woman named Anna who has an account in VK in Ukraine, right? So like we knew that wasn't the same person. We were able to identify that person because they were using stock photos or photos of their friends on social media accounts. Now they don't even need that. Now they can create their own person instantly. And it's untraceable. Like there's no way we'd be able to tell as reporters that these images are not somebody else. And that allows them to get away with massive disinformation campaigns. If you want to create an entirely new identity, whether it doesn't have to be Russia. I always say this, like, Russia's bad. They did a terrible thing. They spent a lot of money and they did really good work for the amount of money they did. They had like for the cost of a half a year of LeBron James, they really messed with our elections. It's crazy. They did it. It may not happen again in that way, but that's what happened. The problem is everybody else took this playbook. Really bad people in the United States trying to, I would guess the Democrats are going to do this to Republicans too this time, have taken that playbook because it's so cheap and so easy and so effective to just spread lies about people. We see Jacob Wohl do it, but he's terrible at it. Imagine, like, I'm sure there are people that are doing it well, but we don't even know who they are because they're doing it well. Does that make sense?
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely. I actually disagree with you a little bit about Russia. But I think what they basically did is they created. I don't think the social media stuff they did had much of an effect. Again, we'll never know how much of an effect. Even me saying not much of an effect with 2016 in mind could still have been enough to affect something.
Right.
But I don't think they were.
Wait, like really quickly. It matters if Pizzagate was them or not because we'll never know. Like, we know that the hacked materials provided Pizzagate. Pizzagate became QAnon. QAnon became some murderers. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, it depends on, like, I don't think by itself, like, any of those accounts did anything. But there's some, like, loose ends that if they were good at hiding them, it's important to know. But anyways, I cut you off. Sorry.
No, I also think it's important to, and people who listen to the show know I've been speaking nonstop about separating all this stuff that's come out of the Mueller report that's Russia related. The hacking material, clearly extremely effective.
Yep.
So let's put that aside. The social media stuff, that's where I'm sort of like, but what they did do though, is they did create this sort of, you know, what they actually did, I think, not important. But by doing what they did, they created this sort of, I don't know how to put this, sort of like they've wounded the discourse. They've made everyone
permanent unease into like, is this person real? Like, what's happening? Like, do people actually believe this, or is this just inflated by a foreign government?
Right. So basically, what they actually did, they knew nothing about, you know, actually playing the game of American politics. And a lot of those posts, they sounded like they didn't even have like a third grade understanding of the U.S. politics. But what they did do is because they were so many bots and disinformation out there that people were just sort of, you know, they're hearing all these things about this basically this foreign influence campaign. And they sort of made everyone suspicious of everyone. And what I think is going to... And I think here's what's going to happen, actually. I think the worry is, and this is why I think the 2016 stuff they did do, social media-wise, is important, is that it's going to set the tone going forward for probably forever. I don't see how it's ever going to go back. And that tone is basically that there's going to be people who are going to be really good at doing this stuff, inspired by what they saw. And it's not going to be foreign, I don't think. I think it's going to be from the
because there's always going to be something tonally off about a person who doesn't live here trying to get our language right. It's just it's always going to be like that.
Right.
Like when they tried to make YouTube videos, it was hilarious. There's this thing called Williams and Calvin. Have you heard of them? So
Right.
Williams and Calvin were like they hire basically what it is they took these two black men from Africa who were students at Moscow State University, and they said, we'll give you a bunch of money if you pretend to be from Georgia and hate Hillary Clinton and make YouTube videos. But they didn't understand anything at all about American culture. So like one time they tried to say they were talking about Louisiana the whole time, and they called it LA because they thought it was the same thing because the postal code abbreviation. So like they kept saying like, yeah, New Orleans, LA. They're like, oh, actually, that's the thing is like the more complicated you try to get with this stuff, the worse it is, the shittier it is. And that's why I think like when we, like you said, if somebody has a native understanding of American politics and uses that playbook, they are in very good shape. Like it's, you can really do a lot of damage very quickly. I think that'll happen in local elections too. I don't think it's just
right.
This is like a permanent thing in all of democracy now.
Right, and speaking of, let's get to the fake news aspect of this. The original meaning of fake news was basically people who created websites strictly knowing they were just making up shit because they got clicks on Facebook, and they were able to get advertising revenue from it. And that was originally what fake news was, to describe those websites. And, that's really, I think, in a sense, the American right wing has always used these sort of disinformation tactics. It's always been a part, Fox News, the various different right wing media, whether it's, a site like Breitbart, whether it's an old school site like, I don't know, Drudge Report.
Right.
But they weren't really using it in the way that we saw in 2016. They basically, would take something that was out there and twist it, take something that was true out there and twist it to mean something to use for their own benefit. But what I think they've discovered in 2016 is that we don't even need to work in the realm of reality. We could just make shit up wholesale and also use these other social media tactics like bots. We see it with Jacob Wall, even though he's, I guess, just as good at it as the Russians were.
I would say they're about on the same plane, right?
Right.
Which is insane because he has a home field advantage that he's just not using. But yeah.
It's a real shame, yeah. But it's, I don't know. It's like I wanted to make a joke before, like it'd be like the equivalent of like Faith Goldie coming over here and trying to be, she is a right wing figure here, but if she pretended to be American, it's like, you can't pull one over me. You say a boot, but your example that actually happened is way funnier. So
True, yeah. And I do think I always call it the human centipede of bad information. Like there is this ecosystem that exists on the right that didn't exist a couple of years ago, but was derivative of like a 1990s sort of political smear ecosystem. And basically what it is that you put a rumor I will say this. So like every single one of these platforms has a check, right? Every single one of them has some sort of editorial judgment where they'll say like, oh, we're not going to report on random stuff from 4chan. A thing started 4chan and ended up on Fox News at the end of the day. And it's not complicated how it happens. Because everybody has their own standards. So if, say I wanted to start a rumor tomorrow that, give me a politician. Anyone.
Bernie Sanders.
All right. Bernie Sanders has, they love diseases. So it's, Bernie Sanders has crippling glaucoma. Like it is a level at which even weed will not help the glaucoma. So I go on 4chan and I post, I've heard Bernie Sanders' doctor personally that Bernie Sanders' glaucoma is fatal. He's the first person ever with fatal glaucoma. It is incredible, but here he is, with fatal glaucoma. So while Fox News would not be like, look at that 4chan post about Bernie Sanders having glaucoma, what will happen is, and this is not on purpose by anybody level, somebody at that 4chan post will be posted to Reddit. Reddit has really little editorial checks, but they saw it posted somewhere. They're not making it up. They got it from 4chan, right? The Gateway Pundit, which is America's dumbest blog in the world, period, will in fact just take random stuff from Reddit. They won't take it from 4chan, they'll take it from Reddit. So they'll say, like, according to this Reddit user, blah, 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 right? Bernie Sanders dying of glaucoma. And then, from there, InfoWars will take it. They'll put it on their show. They'll be like, InfoWars has seen this post, and they are working to confirm that Bernie Sanders is dying of glaucoma. And then, from there, very easily, the Drudge Report, which used to not link to InfoWars or the Gateway Pundit, but they do all the time now. And the Drudge Report is one of the largest traffic drivers in the history of the internet. In the 90s, it was critical in pushing stuff about the Clintons. And it sort of moderated itself throughout the early 2000s, but then once Trump came up, it was not the case. So then it's on the Drudge Report. And then Rush Limbaugh will talk about the thing on the Drudge Report because he has to fill time on the radio. And then Fox News will be like, today, Rush Limbaugh talked about Bernie Sanders' terrible diagnosis of
fatal glaucoma.
And then I'm at home. I started this thing on 4chan 20 minutes ago. Or not 20 minutes ago, but like probably 7 or 8 hours, right? And I'm like, well, maybe it's true. I just made this up. But it's on Fox News, so maybe he does have maybe he's dying of glaucoma. Like I have done this thing. And that's how it eats itself, right? It's like a human centipede. It's just kind of like you feed it excrement, and it gets fed back to you over time because you feel like you may have just hit on something if you're on 4chan, but really the checks at each line break down. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Your example was a perfect diagnosis of the problem and also a good diagnosis of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
But, bringing up a few points of what you said there, it is always shocking to me, and it's something I know, and it's not something that's, it's news to me, but it's always still shocked me when I see. And it really just shows you just how old the right wing in this country is. Just how the Drudge Report is still such a huge traffic driver.
Yeah.
It's such an old school website. It's never changed. It's like how it works. It's just literally able to continue to drive so much traffic based on it got there in the mid 90s, I think, early on when the internet was just taking off. There was no other news site like it, pushing out this sort of alternative, non-mainstream news. It was probably one of the first ideological news websites on the internet. And basically it's just subsisting off of old right-wingers who made it their homepage back in the 90s when they first got on the internet.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, people used to use it as, like, people in the news used to use it as, like, an assignment editor. It's like, oh, it's the top of Drudge. Like, we got to do something about it, right? Especially people in, like, traditional mainstream media who wanted to know what was going on in the middle of the country because I thought Matt Drudge had a really good sort of brain for it. And I think at the time he did, and now it's a lot more extreme than it used to be. But that's the thing is that even, like, so I think it was Gizmodo who did that, who had the initial post about Facebook moderators like taking down Republican content, which wound up being way overblown. But they talked about headlining that story, but putting a headline in that story that would have been like Drudge bait, right? They all know the headlines that Drudge likes, and if they get those headlines, they get traffic, and then that traffic allows them to keep their job. So this whole ecosystem's bad. Like it's slowly like breaking down, and like it's probably good for society that it's breaking down, but it is very like everybody's complicit, and it's awful.
Right.
It's really, yeah.
Right. The funny that you bring up that Gizmodo story because my editor at Mashable is Mike Nunez, and he's the guy who broke that story. And
no, that's the thing. That was a great story.
Right.
It was sort of, in that way where they knew that it was going to be a bonkers story on the right, and it was correct. It was a true story. But that's what happens is, like, they take the grain of truth and they expand. Like, that happened to me during the 2016 election. I broke the story about Hillary Clinton. Do you remember Correct the Record? You know what
right, yep.
Right, so, like...
I could never forget Correct the Record.
Yeah, I know. And that's what happened. I know. So, like, in 2016... Hillary Clinton's, there was a super PAC by David Brock who runs Media Matters and Share Blue and stuff like that. And it was going to be called Correct the Record, and they had devoted $1 million in the subhead of the story was about correcting people on Facebook and Reddit about the record about Hillary Clinton, which is an awful press release and not good and like not a thing that they should have been doing, really, or at least admitting that they were doing.
Right.
But I wrote it up, and then for the rest of the election cycle, for 7 months or something, if you liked Hillary Clinton on the internet, you were a Correct the Record shill who was being paid by David Brock. Now, I don't know how these people. This is $1 million in like lobbying money. That probably lasted for like 90 $1 million in Washington D.C. just goes nowhere.
Right.
But it was taken as this, like, it became this totem for the right that no one can actually like Hillary Clinton. It's clearly this super PAC correcting you on Reddit or Facebook or Twitter or something. And I was like, I started this. I should not have, in hindsight, like, this should not have been a 400-word story. I should have dove deeper. But again, you're driven by scoops. That's the thing on the internet. So I'm part of the ecosystem. Everybody at some level, at some point, is complicit in this like weird internet ecosystem that needs to be changed. And the best way to change it is for millionaires to give journalists millions of dollars. Thank you. Let's give it a minute. Thank you.
I mean, I think it's gonna come. It's gonna eventually happen. I've been seeing that. I don't remember who. Probably Facebook is thinking of funding. I mean, they do already pay a number of outlets to fact check. Yeah. And in their ever brilliant idea to look like they're not taking any sides, one of those fact checkers, I believe, is the Daily Caller.
Yeah, it's a parent company or like associated company of the Daily Caller. It's right. It's crazy.
Right. It's
they stopped using Snopes recently because Snopes is like, this whole thing is not working. Like, this is not working out well. And then they added the Daily Caller people like a couple months later. Not a great vibe.
Right. You know, so much. Speaking of all the issues that these social media companies have, so much of their problems actually come from this need, this obsession of theirs that they need to be perceived as being right down the middle.
Yep.
And no matter what that means to them, it just means, you know, if the left says something, or outlets they perceive to be on the left say something, and then outlets that they perceive to be on the right say something, then the truth has to be a little bit of both, or somewhere right in the center of that. It's never that, hey, maybe one side is actually telling the 100% truth, and the other side is telling a bald-faced lie.
Yeah.
And
that's the issue, right? Is that, like, even in the most just society on the planet, Democrats and Republicans will not tell the equal amount of truth no matter what, because that's not how math works. So, like, if you are weighing it like, you know, we need 50 stories of Republican truth and 50 stories of Democrat truth, then you're not telling the truth. That's not what the truth is. That's not what that is not how like neutrality works. Neutrality is taking in the facts and repeating them in a way that is truthful. And sometimes some people break the law more than others, and some parties do, and some groups of people do. Criminals are not a partisan concept. And if you start treating them that way, if you need one person in jail from each party, then you are in deep trouble. Like, don't do that.
Right. So before we go on to our last topic here, I want to just go back to deepfakes for a second, because I want to talk a little bit more about that. So you were saying before that you think that the biggest issue with deepfakes is going to be these sort of these photos that are basically just completely compiled, and these people don't exist, and I guess they'll be used to make it look like there's a real face behind bot accounts and things like that. I actually, for me, and 2020 actually may be a little bit too soon for this, but there are some people who are already using this technology to make extremely realistic looking 100% fake videos.
Yep.
And honestly, I think sort of where we are in this country with, with everyone the discourse is so all over the place. I don't even think they necessarily need to be that well done for one side of the country, one party to say, no, that's definitely true. Look at it. It's on video.
Yeah.
So
No,
I think there's going to be we're going to see some posts where it's like video leaks of Obama saying, fuck Donald Trump or something like that. And it's going to be this really bad video of a lip-synced Barack Obama saying, oh, fuck Donald Trump. It's going to be things like that. And then it's going to get passed around like crazy. And for, not to be ageist here, but for people over the age of 50, it's going to be very convincing for them.
No, and I think so. I completely agree with this. And I think part of it, too, is that we saw that people don't even need proof last time. Like, there are fake, especially because I cover QAnon a lot, there are fake Hillary Clinton quotes about, like, hanging people and, like, murdering people that exist exclusively in that ecosystem that were never, ever said in any capacity. And being like, look, this has been debunked by everyone in the world. It doesn't matter because, like, they think that Snopes is a liberal rag and the Washington Post doesn't exist, or I don't know. I actually don't even know what their end game is with that. So, like, with no evidence at all, they have created an ecosystem of doubt and fear and hatred. With bad evidence, they can probably do even more. It does. Again, I keep saying this. Like, it doesn't have to be good. Like, it wasn't good in 2016, and it worked great. I think that people. That's the thing that I think that whether it was foreign disinformation or disinformation generally, I think everyone had a feeling. There's a great Guardian article from a couple of years ago that went around Pennsylvania before the election, and they were talking to.
You broke up there for a second. Who are they talking to?
Potential voters.
Okay.
That's right. There was a great Guardian article a couple of years ago before the 2016 election. They were talking to potential voters in suburbs of Pennsylvania, and they kept talking to people, and they were like, "So who are you voting for?" They're like, "I don't really like either of them, but I guess I'm gonna vote for Donald Trump." And they're like, "Why?" And they were like, "Well, Hillary's going to jail." They were like, "What? What do you mean?" They're like, "She's just going." I saw it on Facebook, and I just know she's going to jail. I just know that the jail is where she's headed, and I can't have a president that's in jail, so I'm voting for Donald Trump. And what I realized, and I think what a lot of people realized, was there was no specific message. There was no specific thing that the Russians said. There's no specific thing that American disinformation agents said. It was just creating a feeling that this woman was a criminal. This woman was about to head to jail. And that was the whole point of it. It was to create, it didn't matter which specific message got in your head. Just that something rattled around in the back of your head. This woman was either a spawn of Satan or like literally, again, to jail or and that it didn't matter the specific way they learned it. It just mattered that over time there was this steady drip over and over again that of course she was in jail. So like that's the thing is like you can do 500 deep fakes, and if only one of them sort of like rattles around in the back of your head, it worked.
Right.
And that's what we have to be prepared for. Whoever is the nominee on both sides here too. Like I'm sure there will be efforts by unscrupulous Democrats because, of course, mathematically that's going to happen. So we just have to prepare against that as a democracy. Like this is important. We got to get people out there knowing that not all this information that you see on 4chan and Twitter from anonymous accounts is real, and you got to start trusting some of the press. I don't care who it is, just pick a guy and trust him. So there you go. Or woman.
Right. And I think that segues into our very last thing. We won't go too long on it, but it's sort of where does this I think and there's no better time to talk about this now actually than I'm looking at it right now. Donald Trump was doing a rally earlier. I think he might still be on stage. I'm not sure, but he was basically. His usual rallies are from 2016, but I think the sort of everything we've been talking about, all this, the fake news, the weaponization of social media, the bullshit that's out there seeps from the computer screens and our mobile phone screens onto stage in the real world at these Donald Trump rallies, and it gets, violent.
Yeah. No, I am genuinely worried about political violence. And I think that's what happened. Like, before the midterms, we saw the pipe bomb guy who was, like, people don't think about this enough. If this guy was competent at making bombs, that would have been, like, the craziest thing that ever happened. But he was an idiot, so thank God none of those bombs went off. And then the synagogue shooter, too, who just, like, couldn't take it. Like, he couldn't take that people weren't doing something about this migrant caravan that was being sent by the Jews. That's not going to stop happening. These, like, visceral political messages that are built on lies are going to drive people to violence. And that, especially when people keep saying, like, this is a mortal danger to your life, the immigrants coming up from Mexico, right? If people keep saying this at that tone, then people are going to take action, because not everybody in the world understands the political theater of it. And that's what you saw. That's how we have dead people in a synagogue in like a couple days before the election. It's because, like, literally that guy, Robert Bowers, his whole thing was the migrant caravan is coming. It has a Star of David on the side of one of the trucks. It's being sent by George Soros. We got to stop it. And that was a standard Republican talking point before all that happened. So that's the issue. It can get violent, and it has gotten violent. And the idea that this just is going to go away in the next 18 months as this stuff ramps up and as people become mortal enemies, it's going to be. I'm personally extremely scared of it, and I'm, like, warning people I sound like Alex Jones now. I sound like a doomsday guy, but I think it's going to be a tough couple of months for the United States, and hopefully it doesn't happen. That'd be the greatest thing. But the best way to do it is find a boomer and defuse them, and find a teenager, a disaffected teenager, and defuse them too, and everybody else should be okay. We have a duty to do this as Americans. Like, everybody who's, like, living in reality and understanding that this is just political garbage, go and talk them down. Talk them off the roof, please.
And folks, buy lots of canned beans just in case. Have them stored up. Yeah,
most important, buy Brain Force Plus. It's the only way to get you through this moment.
Oh man, it won't be surprising when Alex Jones comes out with a literal. I mean, it probably already exists. His literal, like, branded for specifics, like the 2020 bunker package. It's.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's like, not we should send him that. I'm sure he'd really like that idea. It's a good idea. Yeah.
Ben Collins of NBC News. We could talk, honestly, I could bring up 20 different topics, but that means I'll just have to invite you on the show again in the future. You should explain where people can find you on Twitter, because your Twitter account is quite the brain fuck. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I did it as a troll. An editor back in the day told me to change my Twitter account, so I did it to, like, the most complicated thing in the world. It's also a good way to mess with people who are trying to do it. So it's the words 1_ like ONE, and then underscore spelled out, and then 2 underscores after that. I'm never changing it. Everyone's just gonna have to deal with it. It's great for me because there's a nice lady who 1_ with 1_ after it, who gets like 90% of my hate mail. I feel bad for her. I owe her a drink, but that's what it is. It's the words 1_ with 2 underscores after it. Or you can just look me up on Twitter with my name, and it probably should come up.
I mean, it speaks to how people have to really search out for you on Twitter, and you have a decent amount of Twitter followers. You got more than me, so I mean.
They're all making mistakes, but that's okay. That's fine. Yeah.
All right, Ben, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt.
Take care. All right, hanging up here on the Skype bloop bloop, going to the second half of the show. But before we do that, folks, patreon.com/MattBinder. Support the show. I ask for a measly $5 a month, but you can give less. You can give more. You can... I don't know, give nothing at all, I guess, but that would not involve you joining the Patreon at all. So patreon.com/MattBinder. Help me grow the show. I am going to be actually starting to do And I know I've been teasing all these various ideas I've going through my head to all of you, whether it's on this part of the show or in the members patron half that we're going into now. I feel like for weeks, if not months. But I am going to start doing these solo YouTube content, short 2 to 5, 6, 7 minute videos that basically will cover topics throughout the week. I don't know if I'll combine them and repurpose it as podcast material. I'm deciding on that, but they'll be on YouTube, along with the regular long-form YouTube live stream / podcast. So you should be subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Matt Binder or doomed.tv. Both will take you to the YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. That's free. If you're watching on YouTube and would like to give a one-off little tip, you can do that via the YouTube Super Chats. It will promote your chat comment to the top of the live chat, and you can give me, I believe you could just give me like as little as like 99 cents or something like that. Maybe even less. I don't even know, but at least I think it's 99 cents. Also support this show by going to iTunes and leaving a review for the podcast. 5-star review if you'd like, written review if you'd like. All that really helps get the word out there. Basically, if you'd like, jump into your favorite YouTube channel comments and spam the show. Hell, why not, right? I'm sure enough of you already do it to Sam Cedar on the Majority Report and Michael Brooks on the Michael Brooks Show. So branch out, do some other shows too. All right, everybody, let me read off the patrons that make this show possible. Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Andrew H, Benji A, Bobby M, Champagne Kami, Chi, Christine H, Colin R, Dave K, David Z, Dragon Slayer, Dum Dum Dum, Floaties, Fraz K, Francis Z, FTW All Day, Greg D, Ian J, Jameson Test, Janelle A, Jasmine H, Jeff K, Jonathan B, Jordan V, Joseph R, Josh C, Katie S, Kyle, Lisa D, Max W, User Me, Michael J, Michael M, Mr. Danks, Nicole A, Namde Net, Omid M, Romina O, Cena, Struggle Session, TM, Tammy G, Thaddeus A, Tina M, Tom G, Tom M, Trine E, Will P, and Zarin. Eventually there'll be a point where there's so many of you that I won't be able to read every single one of you. Help me get to that point. Patreon.com/MattBinder. See you all in the second half of the show. For the podcast listeners, see you later on Doomed. We're back. Hey everyone, and welcome to the members half of the show. For patron subscribers, let's go up to the comments, see what's up here. Francis opens up the chat today with Doombots Assemble. Maybe not the best episode to call us Doombots, but Simon goes #BinderGang. Apparently, Kennedy was watching H-Bomb's Transformers video. Solil says, Matt Leck is cooler, baba booey. Screw you, Solil, screw you. Kennedy says, we don't have to pit two kings against each other like that. Right, but one's a king and one is, I don't know, not a king. Court jester, how about that? And please don't, y'all gonna call me the court jester, which is actually probably more accurate. I probably am more like a court jester, but I am a king, thank you very much. I'm the king. I'm the king of kings, Triple H. Simon says we don't believe in hierarchies. Right. Solio says, didn't the Michael Brooks show just have a show by dialectics? All right, you're going to come in here and you're going to bring up Matt Leck being better than me, and then you're going to name drop the Michael Brooks show? Who do you think you are? So coming in this chat. Francis says, all Matts matter. Kennedy, two horizontally organized autonomous beings. Solio says, thesis, Matt. Antithesis, Matt. Synthesis, Jamie. Okay. Grim says, Sam was lampooning the Silicon Valley startup's canned water called Liquid Death and thought that would be a very Matt Binder choice of a name. I saw that story. I heard Sam shouted me out there. I was making fun of that story when I saw it yesterday. It's apparently some former Netflix employee got over $1 million for a startup that basically puts water in a can and brands it Liquid Death with like punk and straight edge aesthetics. In fact, he specifically name dropped the straight edgers that he knows in real life. I have a problem with this. Number one, the biggest problem is that it is not punk rock at all to pay for water. Why would you pay for water? I mean, the brand fails, the product fails right out of the gate. It's a failure. Second of all, Liquid Death doesn't make any sense. It sounds like the liquid is death. Who is the liquid death to? Their thing is that it's death to your thirst. That makes no sense. That's just ridiculous. The packaging shows a guy like a skull with like water pouring on it. That does not show that thirst is dying. That shows the person drinking it is dying. All right, I'm done talking about Liquid Death now. Francis says, Liquid Death sounds cool. Okay. Kennedy says, you know what I think when I hear Liquid Death? Arsenic. Very good, Kennedy. I think that makes a lot more sense, actually. Whew. Kennedy says, banning Laura Loomer is a gift to her, honestly. That girl's brain is broken. Brian says, I honestly feel bad for her. Someone call her mama. I don't feel bad for her, but there's something off with her. Like the way she was crying in that video. Like legitimately she was crying. Whew. Renee says Laura Looney. Right. Ayahuasca. Good evening, fellow Legion of Doom. Well, good evening, Ayahuasca. Kennedy says, I got banned from Twitter. Where's my 67,000? That is incredible. Laura Loomer doesn't come across to me as someone who can, I guess, command that amount of money. But I've been proven wrong. Let's go back to the comments here. Grim, this almost puts some context to that heinous shit show after heinous shit show capped off with Pam Anderson's visit to Julian Assange. What a fever dream. Kennedy says, if I ask the gun girl to come down to Cincinnati so we can talk, I get banned. It took like a year of constant incitement to get Laura banned, though. Jay Jaribus, I guess you have to chain yourself to the door to cash in. Yeah. Oh, we didn't even get to Laura Loomer. She went to Facebook's. We'll get to that on the next episode, I guess. But Laura Loomer headed on down to Facebook headquarters this time around after getting banned from Facebook. And there's a very hilarious and sad photo of her alone on the couch in the Facebook lobby with like her hands on her head, like having a nervous breakdown, which, boy, that girl. Ayahuasca says, holy shit, that's what I made in the last 2 years before taxes and with a shitload of overtime. All right. Grim says getting attention makes the companies pause on banning. They'll milk controversy up to a point. Kennedy says Chris Lepaco is streaming now too. Well, that's nice. Diener Hawkins, Reptilian Hunter, in the YouTube chat says, right-wing radicalization. You lefties are so frothingly radical. You're positively revolting. Why, thank you. Diener. Jay Dribble says Lepaco should time better, and Brian says in Lepaco's defense, Matt usually streams on Thursday. In Lepaco's defense, everyone should put their schedule around mine. Captain Obvious over on Periscope says, you reporters handled the Covington story really well. I actually did not touch the Covington story because I felt like the video wasn't enough to really... I mean, the kid was clearly acting like a bit of an asshole, but there was not enough from that video to really, in my opinion, to garner a full view of what was going on. So you can look at my Twitter, you can search me on Google. I did not talk about Covington, so you can blow it out your ass, Captain Obvious. Kennedy says Lepaco is talking about one of my tweets right now. Which one? Simon says, so much YouTube videos, so little time. Well, the obvious answer is just spend all your time on this YouTube channel. Bell That Cat on Periscope says, Jacob Wall's the greatest comedian of our time. Fane Gnu says the same thing on Periscope. I think that's giving him a little bit too much credit. But, yeah, I agree. He's very, very funny. Not intentional, though. Brian says, Loomer and Wall are like fire and gasoline. Brett says, Alex is the definition of a grifter. John Buckley says, is Alex Jones worse than the politicians in Baltimore? Well, I mean, no one's defending the politicians you're speaking of. I'm assuming you're talking about that, I think it was the mayor that was pushing her own children's book while she was the mayor and requiring, I think she was requiring like certain schools, like certain classes to like have it part of the curriculum or something like that. It was something weird or something like that. Is anyone defending that on here? No. I mean, she stepped down, didn't she? Is Alex Jones going to stop doing his show? Diener says, you can choose not to watch Jones. That's where it should have stayed instead of getting him digitally Thanos off social media. I like that. Good one, Diener. The problem is, what happens when they decide your show is wrong think? Well, Diener, they won't think that because the show, just like the social media networks, is funded by George Soros. So we're all aligned. But no, I mean, it's just not the fact of choosing. Listen, me personally, and anyone who knows me, has known this is my long-time position. I don't give a rat's ass about deplatforming in terms of I don't advocate for it or advocate against it. I think it's up to the social media networks. It's their platforms. I worry and have great pause with how much power these social media platforms have. But that's a broader discussion that does not have anything to do with what power they actually have over their own platforms. I don't particularly care if Alex Jones has a YouTube channel or not. If he has one, more content for me to make fun of. If he doesn't have one, okay, he loses a bit of his platform. Perhaps he'll do less harm. We could debate about that. I am not completely skeptical of that because I think Milo Yiannopoulos is a perfect example of someone who completely lost any power he had from deplatforming. Alex Jones hasn't been hurt as much, although he definitely took a hit. I personally don't have a skin in the game with that one. You will never see me advocating for someone to get knocked off social media. You will never see me advocating for one of these guys to not get knocked off social media. It's these social media platforms' choice. If you'd like to have that broader discussion I mentioned, that Republicans and the right usually don't want to have, because the free market, baby, and you can't, no government regulation or government interference here. But I mean, really, what you would want is that some of these, some sort of crackdown on the monopoly these companies have, so it's easier for alternative services. And then if you want to eventually get to the conversation, when I say eventually get to the conversation, I mean the right, who I'm already talking about something that's so beyond them. But if we can ever get them there, if you want to get to that conversation of public utility, then we can talk about that as well. Brett says, I haven't been on Facebook in years. I feel good about that. Kennedy says, Facebook was created to creep on women, but point taken. Right, yeah. Simon says they just use Facebook for stalking nowadays. It's the most shadiest business model ever, says Simon. John Buckley says, I don't buy the Nazis' resurgence argument. I think it's a distraction from a failed universalist empire. Well, if you'd like to make that argument, you can another day, John. I would debate you on that. I know what you're saying, but you're wording it in an interesting way. Bullwhip says, I share what I'm doing, signing, and watching on Facebook, but otherwise it's useless to me. John Buckley says the universities are broken. The media is broken. Major cities are broken. We've been that way for 18 years. Oh, look, quick, over there. See? The Nazis. Well, I mean, all those things you mentioned are not broken in the way that they, to you, the way they actually are broken. You think the left says we're living in a paradise? And that we love the media, and we love how the education system is, and we love how our cities are doing? But also saying, like you just brought up universities, the media, major cities. Why are none of those, oh, look, quick over there? But the resurgence of white supremacy in this country is, oh, look, quick over there. Is it because you don't want to talk about one? Because that's what it seems like to me. I mean, if you would have a better argument if you took one of those things and said, this is the real problem we should be focusing on. I'd still think I would have to argue with you that, hey, we can talk about more than one thing at a time. We have that intelligence. We have that ability. But giving you the pass here, your argument does not work if you're going to name half a dozen things and then say the seventh is a distraction. Come on. I expect a little bit better from my right-wing trolls. Grimm says the Bush, FBI of Mueller and Comey's report on right-wing extremism gathering was finally published in the Obama administration a decade ago. Kyle says it's the adoption of evangelical Christian standards as the most restrictive to make sure they appease everyone. Oh, there was a conversation I passed by because it was just a little bit off topic here. So, John says 32 people were shot in Chicago last weekend. But wait, that is racist. Well, no. The left's answer to that is very clearly gun control. Something that your ideology and your faves actively fight against. And before you go, Chicago's got gun control. It's a major city. Democratic stronghold. Well, you know how those guns get into Chicago, right? Chicago isn't an island in the middle of the Pacific. The surrounding states have, and not even just the surrounding states, the state Chicago is in itself. The guns from outside of Chicago, where gun control is non-existent or more lax, those guns seep into Chicago. You want to deal with... You actually care about the 32 people that were shot in Chicago last weekend, and you're not actually using that as a right-wing talking point, which, by the way, would then make it very racist, for sure, like you also mocked. But if you actually care about those people, you would advocate for gun control. That's the most obvious way to stop those shootings. Diener says, this is censorship. So odd that people on the left embrace it so hard. I just think it's deeply sad. Again, it's not censorship. No one is stopping these people from talking. They're saying, you can't talk on my platform. You, my friend, can go outside and mutter whatever you like on the street as you walk and go about your business. If you loiter in a store spewing your bullshit, the store can kick you out. They're not censoring you. They're not saying you can't say your ridiculous things. They're saying you can't say your ridiculous things in our place of business. Grimm says Antifa are constantly censored. Mike over on Facebook says, no one has ever said fake news to my knowledge before Trump. No, it was fake news was a term used to speak of specific websites that were peddling conspiracies and made up stories basically for clicks. And the media was covering this and calling it fake news. And Trump saw it and basically co-opted the terminology to talk about any media he doesn't like, any media he thinks is lying, even if it's true stories, which is obviously what he's talking about. And that sort of became what fake news meant. John says, F in Russia. Jesus, their GDP is the size of Italy. Their army is 1/10 the size of NATO. Good God. Well, I mean, I actually said on the thing that I think it's overblown. But at the same time, I mean, they clearly attempted to do some influence, and we know what they did. And it's indisputable that there has been some effect. I mean, even if you argue, like I actually believe, like I said on the show, that the actual social media stuff didn't change anyone's vote, or didn't change enough people to matter's vote. I mean, you can just look online and see people accusing others of being a bot left and right. That's the Russian influence campaign's doing. I mean, that's indisputable. There's no debate there. You can try, obviously, but you would not be very successful in debating that. Kyle says, Russia did try to do things, but I'm more concerned with the homegrown election interference. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kennedy says, I'm concerned with oligarchs anywhere thinking it's within their rights to buy elections. Well, Diener and John kept everyone in the comment section busy, it looks like. DG64 on Periscope called us Better Males Detective. A play on True Detective. Me and Ben. Better Males Detective. I like that. I'm going to run with it. See, I don't think you guys know this, but back when I was the men's rights movement's enemy number one, there was a short amount of time where I probably surpassed even Dave Futrell of We Hunted the Mammoth as their most hated commentator. They put together, the men's rights movement, a YouTuber who was popular in that movement, put together the Mangina Awards. And the MRA guys voted on who was the Mangina of the Year. Basically, their ridiculous term for basically saying the biggest pussy or some shit like that. And I was very proud of being nominated for such an award. So I actively lobbied to win. And, folks, I believe it was 2014 or 2015, I won Mangina of the Year. So, my friend, I'm very proud to be Better Males Detective. It's honestly clever, if you ask me. 64 DG64 on Periscope also says, "What's wrong with Faith Goldie? She's effing hot and awesome." I mean, and then he follows up with losers. I mean, if that's your reasoning for liking your conservative commentator, that she's hot and awesome, then, I mean, I don't know what to argue with you there. I mean, I know what Faith Goldie looks like. If you'd like, on the YouTube stream, I can pull up a picture of Faith Goldie if you guys are not familiar with her. I mean, here. There you go, guys, on the YouTube channel. That's Faith Goldie. I mean, I guess if you like her and you find her attractive, she seems like an attractive woman. She's a white supremacist. Kind of curtails any sort of looks for me. I mean, I can't really say, that girl's great looking. Oh, she's hot, but the white supremacy thing, I think I can look past that. And it's sort of a deal breaker for me. But if that's your thing, that's fine for you. For me, I pay attention to Faith Goldie's words and what she advocates for and what she pushes for and the things she says. That to me is more important. No one's banning her from any social media platforms because she's too hot. No one's got a problem with how she looks. She's not, by the way, she's not too hot. So, for the record. Brian says Bernie tokes for his condition, okay? Theo says, I just saw the Gateway Pundit for the first time. God bless you, Theon. Theo, I should say. I just called you Theon, didn't I? Got Game of Thrones on the mind. Speaking of Game of Thrones, I wanted to do a Game of Thrones stream for you guys after doing one a couple weeks ago. That was fun. And I just haven't had the chance. I got to do at least one before the episode on Sunday. And then I want to try to do a live stream after the last two episodes, or each of the last two episodes. I'm going to see about that. I'll get back to you guys on what's definitely going to happen. But it was a lot of fun doing the Game of Thrones live stream. And Creationist Cat jumped in the chat, and that was a lot of fun that day. That night, actually. I think I was streaming at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday/Sunday. But we should definitely do it again. If you guys promise you'll jump in that live stream, so I'm not just talking to myself. I wasn't that night, but I got lucky, I feel like, 'cause it was a Saturday night. But if you guys want to talk Game of Thrones, we should set that up. Maybe I'll jump in Discord or Patreon and the Patreon and we'll schedule that and get that going. Not much time left to do that, but We'll do it. Bose in Periscope talking about me and Ben. Holy crap, you guys are misinformed. Thank you, Bose. Grim says Trump is obese and psychotic. So yeah, his health should be questioned if he can unilaterally launch nuclear weapons. Right. Right, about the obese part. Right now, I'm just, whatever. John says, should Hillary passing out at the 9/11 memorial been news? Well, yes, I think it was news. Did it mean she was dying, like some right-wing outlets were saying? No. She passed out at... I am a very healthy individual, as far as I know. My doctor at my checkups tells me I'm healthy. In 8th grade, it's the only time this ever happened to me, I got so hot at an event, and obviously it was something that affected me because I remember it in 8th grade. I almost passed out because I did not realize I was getting so hot, and I was dehydrated that I almost passed out. That seems like that's what happened to her. What? How old was I in 8th grade? What, 13? 12? So here I am 20 years later. I'm not dead. So I think, it was certainly news she passed out at the 9/11 memorial. But that's not all the right ran with. And yeah, as Simon points out, Hillary's ancient history. You guys love bringing up Hillary because that's all you got. The Norwegian says, I notice Matt keeps calling the past 20 years always. His millennial mindset is showing. Well, a little bit of that for sure. But also, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is just the modern history of politics. And maybe 20 is a bit short to be going back. It's more like the 80s with Reagan, I feel like. From then on. And I try to include all that when talking about these things. But I think if you're going before that, yeah, you're sort of bringing up an era that is now long gone. And I do think eventually, I think we're going to even say that we're at a point where there's this new era. Bullwhip says, Elizabeth Warren told Mitch McConnell, it's not over yet, buddy. Right? Theo and Kennedy, then we're at the point in the chat where Theo and Kennedy cringed at the thought of me eventually getting to their comments, which I skipped most of the ones I think they wanted me to skip. And read these. Beretta8 on Periscope says, MAGA from Canada. Make America Great Again from Canada? Well, okay, I guess. Brian says, he better read these. This is podcast gold. Well, I think I read some of them. Simon says, Dow is a Bernie bro now, because we brought up early in the show, we brought up Correct the Record, right? Verit codes are being mentioned by Ayahuasca and Francis Zek, right? I remember Verit. Brian says, we needed your banning talents in the TYT chat earlier, Kennedy. The Andy Kindler dude made an appearance. Who's the Andy Kindler dude? Kennedy says, John, I'm not allowed to ban dumb baby idiots in this chat, so you're safe. Right, the rules in my chat are this. You can come in here, and Kennedy's been great, a great mod, probably my best mod, not to knock my other mods. But Kennedy's been great on this. You can come in this chat and spew your bullshit as long as you are respectful to everyone in the chat and allow everyone to also comment without spamming and just basically posting racist shit for the hell of it. I mean, I don't want you posting racist shit anyway, but there's leniency in this chat to a point. Because as you all know, I'm open to... I welcome the debate. I love owning you losers. But if you come in here and you're just going to be posting the N-word and spamming so no one else's chats can be read because the stream is going so fast, that'll get you banned. Because you're being disrespectful to my community here. So, I mean, you want to talk about the left and censorship? I'm pretty open here, buddy. I would say I'm probably better than any other right-winger, actually. Go to Dave Rubin's chat and say something. Tweet something to Dave Rubin. Tweet something to any of your favorite right-wingers that bothers them. I'm blocked on Twitter by probably an assortment of right-wingers who claim to be pro-free speech but can't handle when I jumped on Twitter and owned them with a sentence and a screenshot of their own words. Brian says, knock on wood, he's a post-Binder MR. What's that? What are you talking about? Kennedy says, TYT seriously needs mods. That chat is a wreck. To be fair to TYT, if this show got to that point ever, or even close to it, even the majority port where it's at now, you probably have to get a little bit stronger with the bans because so many people are in there just spewing whatever they're spewing that you gotta probably get a little bit more strict with how the show is run, right? I mean, that's just how it is. Ayahuasca says, Peter Dow can serve in the re-education camps as an example of like a drug addict that became rehabilitated like they would do in school during the War on Drugs Week. Simon says Dow should go back to making music. I'm actually going to reach out to Peter Dow and get him on this show. I'm being serious. Beretta says, better just to watch the truth in congressional hearings mostly. Too many leftists rely on CNN and TYT. Do you think the CNN and TYT are viewed in the same light by the left? That's a very odd view of things. Paintmaster1 on Periscope. There are extremes on both sides, but the right seems to have lost any semblance of common sense. Well, the extremes on the left are usually just like the weird conspiracy theorists who think Seth Rich was Julian Assange's source for the hacked emails. They're not usually going on shooting rampages or plotting terrorist attacks. Wait, Andy Kindler has a doxer who harasses him in YouTube live stream chats? Boz says, this is why people are losing faith in the media. Why is that? John says, 6 corporations own 90% of the media. Right, and that's something that the left has... I don't know if your numbers are 100% accurate, but yes, a small number of corporations control a majority of the media in this country. And that is something the left has been going on about for decades. You guys just woke up now to it. Please. On Periscope, right, maybe a couple minutes ago, Beretta and Boz are talking about Jussie Smollett. So that's where that is on Periscope. I'm not even going to go into that. Yeah, one loser who was just an actor, not even like a figure in politics on the left. So I don't know why, because he's black? That's why? You guys are so... Don't even try to hide it, do you? Yeah. Ayahuasca, Sixies, and Jay Jaribas all calling me out for the ageism earlier. I get it. All right. Boz says Snopes is a joke and shouldn't be trusted. Snopes has been around for very long. Like the early days of the internet, like the 90s. They've been debunking internet conspiracies for a very long time. They're rather good at it. Do they make mistakes? I'm sure they have. Everyone does at some point. But they're legit. Renee, when he heard my ageism, checked to make sure my dad wasn't in the chat. He said, Papa Binder isn't here. Francis says, all boomers except Alan, smiley face. Right. Sixes says, so is Google going to fix the algorithms again for the next election? Well, the only thing Google has only said in terms of, what do you, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Fix the algorithms. For which? Are you talking about the search, Google search? The Norwegian says, but her emails. And Grim says, what's not the point of the Benghazi hearings? Paintmaster on Periscope. Disinformation is the best way to get people to support your cause these days. It's so sad. I mean, if you're admitting to it, I guess. Brian says, Hillary is a bad person, but not for what the right thinks. We lost some, this chat stream. Stop bringing in some of the Periscope chats. Let me go to the Periscope and... certified informant on Periscope. Why are radical leftist cities run like shit? Also called me Rachel Maddow with facial hair. Also said Brian Stelter's, spelled Brain Stelter's voice in Rachel Maddow's Bobby. Not body, he said Bobby. Wish I had the money Rachel Maddow and Brian Stelter have. Don't think I have Brian Stelter's voice. My voice is much deeper than his, actually. Interestingly enough. Why are radical leftist cities run like shit? Well, I mean, where are you from? Green Lifer says, no wonder why leftists don't last on radio. Boring as fuck. Cool. NPC says, certified informant. You guys are really, come on. I need better trolls than this. This is sad. I'm kind of bored of this. Palpable Disgust says, I think the Russia stuff has poisoned discourse. Saw someone call abolish ICE Russian propaganda today. Well, thank you, Palpable Disgust, for bringing a smart comment to the Periscope stream. But yes, for sure, that's what I was getting at, and I've said that before in previous episodes of the podcast. It has definitely hurt the discourse. And without a doubt, it has sort of normie liberals going up against legitimate leftist movements and legitimate accounts and sort of propel this Russia-phobia. I don't like it. It bothers me for sure. And you hit the nail on the head there. Absolutely. Ribeiro says, Louis Farrakhan is hot as F. Right. Of course. And I just want to share this. Periscope informs me that Cum Goblin 69 has joined the chat. Cum Goblin 69. It's good. Respect. Let me make sure we didn't lose any... ayahuasca. I just saw those. This restream doesn't pull in the super chats. Shit. All right, I'll have to pay attention to the YouTube feed. Ayahuasca, thank you for the the super chat tip. I appreciate that. Did you leave a message? I don't see any comments. Let me, I don't think you left any comments, but thank you, Ayahuasca. As always. Folks, gonna read the last comments here. And that's the show. Geez, this restream chat just stopped bringing in chats. That sucks. I'm sorry. Let me go back to the YouTube stream. Give me a second here. I'm sorry. Restream screwing me up here. All right, here we go. Norwegian, Hillary is flawed, but nowhere near as flawed as anyone on the GOP side. Clement says, oh my God, Ben Collins, get better internet. He was streaming from his iPad, so I was shocked at how well it was, actually. It was better than I thought in terms of the quality. I was getting worried at the beginning, but it pulled through for the most part. Grim says, I hope Illumina gets involuntary hospitalization. She won't be taken willingly, but she needs help. Sixes says, Alex Jones knows he is breaking the rules. He's well aware of what he was doing, and this is an attack on free speech? I don't think so. Only because Jones is aware of what he's doing and still doing. Brian says, Ben Collins is awesomely pleasant. Yeah, he's great. That's why I had him on the show. John Buckley says, yay, he talks to us now. And Theo says, he's going to talk about you, dude. Sixes says, you do okay, Matt. Keep up the great work. Just okay? I just do okay? I get what you're saying. Thank you. Dragon Slayer says, I like Dum to Dum Dum because it makes my name sound more like an epic announcement. Brian says, techies are the bane of my existence. Kennedy says, Lapaco read one of my tweets about Michael Tracy. Right. Francis says, Tracy is ridiculous. Renee says, funny in that boy in a funny kind of way. Francis says, I've been told this privately by notable people. Yeah, Tracy always has some high-profile people privately telling him stuff. Bullwhip says, I was there and I lived it, but I never understand the chat until Matt explains it. Dinah Cat Loves Me says, or Dina Cat Loves Me, I'm sorry, either way. Dina Cat Loves Me says, I, for one, am convinced that the Russian social media campaign did swing the election. I really don't think it did. However, if you want to bring in the hacked emails, without a doubt, I think that you could argue that. The hacked emails affected the election immensely. Just the social media stuff, though, we can debate that. You can argue that no one's going to be right or wrong because we'll really never know. There's no way to put a number or no way to prove that, really. My dad says, you should add that Mangina of the Year to your online bios. I was proud of you. Thank you, Dad. Ayahuasca says, faith is gross. You can see the racism. I like that. You can see the racism. NFK Gaming says, I don't know, believe white supremacy exists other than in groups like the KKK, but there are supremacy groups for probably any race in America. Well, not really, though. I mean, what is a black power group? I mean, there's really, black activists in the sense of them advocating for black issues is basically them saying we want the issues of facing black men and women to be talked about more prominently and be taken more seriously. Criminal justice reform, healthcare issues, basically representation in media. None of it advocates for getting white people out of the country. None of it advocates for a black-only society. That's the difference. Black power means, for the betterment of black people. White power means get rid of the others. White people only. That's the fundamental difference between that. If you want to say there are supremacy groups, there's not. Black Lives Matter is saying their lives matter too. They're not saying we don't want anyone to care about white people anymore. The white supremacists are out there saying you will not replace us. And then specifically another chant is Jews will not replace us. There's a fundamental difference there. I'm sorry. My dad says that there are two really funny YouTube bits. Introducing the nominees. Oh, for the Mangina of the Year. Yeah, I beat Barack Obama. I beat Stephen Colbert. Please, I'm proudly the Mangina of the Year for whatever year that was. Renee, I forgot I should put the Skype calls on. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll remember next time. Rami, next time. To take the calls via Skype. Michael says, speaking of nuclear weapons, doesn't the talking point about mutually assured destruction go out the window when factoring in climate change? Seems we could completely decommission them. Wow. The Norwegian says, Matt is interested in high-level ideas. This is a Dave Rubin reference, isn't it? Right. Francis Zek says, high-level and important ideas. My brain will never recover. Renee says, my mind is still processing all these ideas. Sixes says, I would suggest to the mods, remove all the comments that are indeed racist. Channels can get reported for comments in live chat. Probably something you already know, just heads up. Right, yeah, if things get ridiculous, then definitely. What I'm saying is, like, if some right-wing troll's just being a bit of an asshole in the chat and annoying you without spamming the chat, let them be. I'll get to them. Michael says, Ruben blocked me. Dinah says, the left in this country will never build re-education camps. How can you re-educate the uneducated? Grim says, Snopes does have a conservative bias like most corporate media. John says there are re-education camps. It's called public schools. I saw that coming, John. Come on. I expect better from you right-wing trolls, especially in my chat. Come on. In my room, you gotta bring your best. And they're not bringing their best. Sixes says, I have watched and listened to Alex Jones for years. Within the past few years, he has went to the very extreme. He has some good points, but he just went crazy as of late. I don't know if I'd say he has good points. Wouldn't go that far, but yes, and I've talked about this on the show too before. Early Alex Jones was your general old school conspiracy theory type stuff, alien abduction type stuff. The most worst he got to probably was like cults and stuff like that. But yeah, it was like, missing people, things like that. Your general early like conspiratorial material. And then he got really, really political. Really political. I mean, you could always tell he was a right winger. But then he basically became a political show. And that's when he went crazy. Crazier. Sixes says talking about the difference between black power and white power. I don't know about that. Black power groups are adamantly against white control. It's pure BS because they weren't made to come here. Oof, they offered themselves up and not the other way around. Oh boy, I'm not going to go there. We don't have enough time. But man, you are off the mark to say the least. Daniel says, you are correct, Matt. Marginalized groups seeking to be less oppressed is just that. Right. Krim says, I don't think you have an accurate history of the Atlantic Triangle trade, Six. I agree with you, Grim, right. But Six does agree with me that let people speak their piece, but spamming with nonsense is another story. Totally agree. D. Tramer says, I am Jewish and I agree that I won't replace them. Renee says, check out Memes TV for another platform that's directed towards the left. You mean Memes TV? Renee says, you mess with Dark Gritty, you best not miss. Daniel says, ha. And the final chat of the stream, just making sure there's no other chats out there I'm missing. Oh, I've got the Facebook. Let me make sure there's... don't want to miss my lovely few Facebook watchers. No, that's it. All right. The final comment is from... Where is it? Jeez, this restream thing not bringing in the comments really messed up my shit. Renee, Six says, absolutely, early Alex Jones is much different. And then Renee says, from interviewing Gore Vidal to interviewing Trump or the kid thrown out of his parents' house. Francis Zek, that's right. This is coming right now. See you all next time on Doomed.